Can we call the meeting to order?
Turn off the mics.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to stifle conversation, but
It's good everybody's awake now.
that's right. Woke up. That's right. So the second item on the agenda, and we do have a quorum, incidentally. The second item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for November 18, the 2nd of December, and the 3rd of December.
They look good, even though I wasn't here for a couple months. They look good.
There was one change. Airport. Yeah, the airport, the thing that they're going to pay us back $200,000 a year for.
2 years.
It said 2 years, but I thought, oh, they only owe $400,000. That's pretty darn good. They really worked it down, but it is actually 20.
20.
Okay, so that was one change. Do I have a
Make a motion to second.
all in favor?
Aye.
We're caught up almost. We are caught up. So the main topic today is finalized recommendations for 2017, but we have some guests here this morning that want to go over any other. I think the item was the Prospect Street intersection situation with the bike path, and we didn't quite understand where that was left off. We still have 380,000 there called Prospect Street Shared Use Bike Path, and we have photos.
Mike was going to be here, but he and I did have a chance to speak yesterday, and we just wanted to let you know that the proposal is the same. That hasn't changed. And the information that I had given you about, doing something additional, we don't have to do because the subdivision is moving forward, and that was something that had been stalled. So the section that goes.
The subdivision up behind the cemetery?
Yes, what's the name of that?
I forgot. I honestly forgot.
It's
I
not
can't
the,
remember the name of it.
Woodlands.
Woodlands.
The Woodlands subdivision was stalled, but it's now moving forward, so, they, on this map, you'll see this is the black dotted line. The section that, actually where the little arrow that says Millville Path ongoing shows, that's where the Woodlands subdivision is. And we are going to be building the section that goes from the jog over towards Prospect Street. So that's what the request, the previous request had been for. So that's the portion that's going to get done. Yeah.
So back up, if you will, make sure I'm on the right page here. So the bike path comes down, then the dotted black goes to, I guess, the intersection of Joy Street and something else. So, and then you're going to do the one over to, so you said over to Prospect Street?
Yes.
She
Where's,
means the connector to the
you mean the red?
Woodland thing. Is that what you're
No,
talking about
the
there?
dotted black
Thank you.
section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the muck path
This,
ends now.
this is the Woodlands
Subdivision.
And this section here is the section that we're going to do.
This little thing here?
Yep, the dotted section, from
Okay.
here to here. These 4 dots.
No, I have a feeling that's going to be a lot less, right? That little section's 380,000?
Like, we're talking about the Prospect Hill bike path, and I don't know if you can,
So we're going to avoid, it looks like we're going to avoid Prospect Street altogether.
yes, as much as possible.
So we're not straight past.
The red section is the one that we're working on the takings for, and that's going to be constructed before next summer. So from the Hummock Pond intersection to the, just before the Quaker Milk Prospect intersection, that we're working on right now. So that section is funded and projected to be under construction in the spring.
And will that contain a bike path, or a sidewalk, or?
A bike path, 8 feet wide.
But we're gonna do the other thing anyway?
Yes, because that's gonna allow people to not have to bike on Prospect Street and.
It gets them over to Wynn,
Yes.
okay.
And that's 380 or whatever it is, the black part, black guy.
That was approved in 2014.
Yeah, there isn't a request for this coming year.
Not at all. No, these are all, a lot of this previously approved projects.
What, he was asking how much that little section was approved for.
The Mill Hill area,
The black line?
Mill Hill Path? Yeah, it was in there with about 300,000. It was approved, I believe it was 250.
What Mike and I did yesterday was to go, this is, the 17 request is the same, but we went out further in the years and went through all of the plans and reports that were out there, made a list of the work items and projected a construction period for that. So this, where before it wasn't complete, this is
Just so I understand, so this is roadway bike pass, which is right? What is it a combination of? Is it a combination of, what did we have before? We had DPW plus, and we had plus, and we had DPW. Is this
everything highlighted in yellow should be on the capital plan that you have,
for,
17.
Chair, can I just ask Mike a clerical
thank you.
question so everyone's clear on something? Phil,
Pardon me?
can I ask Mike a
Sure.
question for everyone, because I can tell there's a little confusion. Mike, the black dotted line, okay, where is the Woodland Road entrance that's gonna be the section that is provided by the applicant for that project? Because it's technically hard to see. Is it where it says on-street bike route?
It's essentially the western half of that black dotted line.
So
There's a-
like little, where the writing is really, really small, it says on-street bike route, is that what that is?
No, where the arrow's
Okay.
pointing where it says Mill Hill Path ongoing.
Yeah.
There's a street that separates that, basically, right where the angle is.
Right,
that
so
dotted
that's
line.
all part of
That's
it.
Mill Hill Lane.
Okay,
And from
okay.
Mill Hill Lane to Joy Street is the subdivision roads, Woodland Hill
All
subdivision.
right, because people don't know, okay, Hummock Pond Road technically splits the cemeteries. And if that, where it says potential on-street bike route, that's Hummock Pond Road, and that gets you to that little triangle for the Catholic cemetery entrance, so that people know where we are, because it is confusing. I'm telling you, people don't know that that's, they think it's Joy Street, it isn't. So now I know where we are. So the part that we're doing, Kara, is where that little line is only 3 dots. So
Yes.
is that gonna be paved? Wasn't there a thing where we were gonna have one that was stone dust? And then the other one was paved? Because that was already approved, I think, or something, to improve the existing path that already goes up into the park
It-
as part of this.
Correct. I think the recommendation was treat that as a future improvement.
Okay.
Whatever improvements are happening in Mill Hill Park itself, but this paved section is
This is the real one? Okay.
the option we're progressing.
Okay, because it is, now that everybody can see what he's talking about, now it all comes clear now, so that's good.
Yeah, that was my recollection, and this is very old, was that, stone dust, signage, et cetera, is kind of an inexpensive way to get around the Prospect Street difficulties, and that was approved.
The first like entrance,
Yeah.
it's already like built. This one with the black dot
This is
is
gonna-
not built.
Right, so now we're gonna pave it.
Yeah, to get to the Woodland subdivision. I couldn't figure out myself where the Woodland, now I know exactly where it is, so now I can see it. They're
So-
paving that road, that entrance to that little development
And
They're
I was,
allowing us to drive bikes on that road, to go down to.
I was surprised. I went to a funeral and they buried the person right around here in the Catholic cemetery, and then I saw the road going up to the new development. I was saying, whoa, where'd this come from? So I kind of know what you're talking about, but the request is just to pave those 4 dots.
For the town.
No, actually, the 380,000 is not a request that we're making this year, so that can be struck out. We have the funds already for.
So we're just taking 380 out,
Yes.
and we don't need to put anything into subsequent years for the actual Prospect Street situation?
Not at this time.
Not at this time, but in the future?
Absolutely. As part of sidewalk improvements, so the only improvement along Prospect Street left to make outside the Mill Hill path, and this group of, I refer to as the Mill Hill pedestrian improvements. The Milk Street extension's already funded. The Wynn Street improvements to improve that connection to the Nantucket Road, that's being requested, I believe, in 2018. Am I saying that wrong?
I think you're right.
But the section on Prospect Street, the sidewalk improvement, that would be wrapped into this 10-year program of sidewalk improvements that we're including in the program, this capital program for next year and subsequent years.
The $1 million.
Millions per year.
Well, that really gets at what I would keep asking for is some sort of a breakdown of what each of these $1.5 million, which you've already said is downtown, and we typically down in the lower Main Street area, the High Line, et cetera, and then $1 million, $1 million, $1 million. I think that would behoove us to know what we're talking about. To say, okay, well, we approved that, we didn't approve that. Oh, it's built into the. Okay. Richard.
Just a point of clarification, the red dots, that's stuff that is already funded, or
From-
will be funded?
Yep, from the lower left-hand corner, or just above where it says to Cisco,
Mm-hmm.
the red dot that heads up Milk Street
Yeah.
and goes to, actually Mont Vernon, but
Right.
almost up to Milk and Quaker and Prospect.
Right.
That is funded, and presently
Boards and process of signing off.
on the takings
Okay.
and so forth, and
So what year will that be?
it should be finished for next season.
It's the final phase.
And then, is there any extension on the hummock pond and those red dots?
That's what it is, kind of.
That section we haven't funded.
Okay, that's not.
You're talking about that's
Through the
behind
cemeteries.
these?
Yes.
Okay.
From the lower left-hand corner, then heading southwest.
Great.
And then, the Quaker Road sidewalk to Vestal, is that in future years, or is that being funded currently, or, just because they're on here, it'd be helpful.
Oh, the dotted portion?
Yeah, just that little section that goes to Vestal.
Yep.
Again, the strategy was to include that into this 10-year program of sidewalk improvements for the islands. Again, the Harborfront area's priority, the connections from town to mid-islands were future year priorities. There's a lot of homework that needs to be done on segmenting those areas out and figuring out what the program looks like each year for the 10 years. And that's just something that's going to get refined as we get closer to those out years. So it's in those package of improvements, and it'll get further refined once costs are known, design restrictions or right-of-way issues or environmental issues are better known. Then we can start actually refining the scope of those projects and programming that towards the million request annually for these different improvements. But this, along with the sidewalk improvements on Pleasant Street, those types of very important projects are going to be requested in future years. It's just the idea is to make this part of a 10-year program to address all of those within that time frame.
I guess from one point, one thing that would help us is that we're getting these, we're back to the spreadsheets when we're trying to use the software, and
As soon as we
makes
get
it,
access to the software, we'll be able to let you know.
I got this at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon,
Okay, all right. Because I think we'd like to rely on this because the backup is very easy to understand, very readable, and there should be one for each one. So hopefully next year we can get it all on the same, because I know it's the first year of the software, so. Christie?
Mike, is the idea that the project travels down Quaker Road and stops at, what, I think it's Vestal? Is the idea to use Vestal Street, or I think it's Upper Vestal Street, instead of going down across the cemetery?
Exactly,
Towards Mountain.
you just share that way with it's a low traffic
Yeah,
roadway,
okay.
so I think everybody can share the paved area, if not walk on the shoulder or something like this, but it's definitely a safer road than, say, Quaker Road to share.
Is that the Mount Vernon section?
The Vestal, the connection between Wind Street and Quaker
Way
Road.
to the corner there.
And is the idea not to use, what's that, Saratoga,
Correct,
because it's a one-way? Would
exactly,
you not have bike traffic?
exactly.
Is that the-
Not saying that it wouldn't
Yeah,
happen
yeah.
in reality, but
Because
that's the
it's,
idea.
yeah, it's just that little appendage, but there's an available road right there, it just happens to be a one-way.
Exactly.
And private.
So to sign that and encourage it as a two-way flow, it's just, we're not encouraging it, but I'm sure it will happen.
Okay.
Just kind of one other thought. It was my, impression early on, or at least we talked about a couple of meetings, that Prospect sidewalk was for the 380,000. And I guess, question to you, Mike, last week we heard from Libby that the in-town bike path, the estimates came back from the state, and they were considerably higher. So I just wanted to ask, what's the kind of timeline for when the in-town bike path coming down Washington is? Or at least that Goose Pond piece.
There's a recommendation on the issues with the bids. There's a 120-day window from when it was advertised. So from September 12th, that's when that 120-day clock started. Right now, the bids that were submitted are being reviewed. There's been a lot of errors found, and it contributed to the high bids. Those are being corrected. If I had to speculate on what the solution is going to be, it'll be rebid with a lot of these corrections clarified, so that the contractors or whoever's bidding on the project have a better understanding of how to propose on that project. So if that's the solution, then it should rectify it to some extent, the high bid results. So we should have a lower dollar figure on a second round of bidding.
Okay, so then, that pushes your timeline back 3 months or so, or 6 months.
Exactly. Again, still waiting on the strategy. There's a proposed construction schedule that needs to be submitted that hasn't been submitted yet, so I can't comment on what is being proposed, but the idea is still have it ready for December 2017.
And then for the project overall, when's kind of the rough timeline for when it's going to be completed?
Say it one more time, I'm sorry.
The project overall, from Goose, once that Goose Pond section is built, all the way down past Marine Home Center, when's that anticipated to be?
Well, we're requesting the funds for the design this year.
Yep.
So, it's, again, you're speculating time frames for turnaround design, there's some utility work that needs to be done, so I'm assuming it's a 3-year window. But again, that's very ambitious. So a lot of times these projects are about a 10-year window from actually initiating. That's just standard, but I would say more like a 3 to 5-year window.
Yep.
I believe we have this phase 2 and 3 programs for the tip in 2020 and 2021. So right now, those are the 2020, 2021 are the years we're anticipating this being ready for bidding for construction, and that falls within that 3 to 5-year window. Again, that's ambitious. I'm sure some issues may pop up, but
Yeah. And so with that, I'll get back to what I was saying earlier, kind of during some of our meetings on capital program, which is that I think it really behooves us to get that little section cleaned up on Prospect Hill, because it provides a way for folks to get in and out of town safely. It's just a thought. I don't find it acceptable to wait 5 years for a path in and out of town, but that's just me. It might be helpful for us as capital programs. I know, Phil, we've talked about this section for years, and I haven't been on the board very long, but we talked about the in-town bike path 3 years ago, and
Still talking about it.
we haven't put a shovel in the ground yet. So sometimes it takes a little financial gumption to at least get a section done and say, it's a small little bit to improve that section and would really help people getting in and out of town. And just as far as priorities and strategies go, I think sometimes it might be helpful for this group to step in and say, or maybe make a recommendation to the FinCom or the selectmen saying this might be helpful policy-wise. You've recommended a lot of other things for safety purposes.
I agree. I know, I had just a story, my sister-in-law, who's 65, and her granddaughter needed to get their bikes from Sherburne Commons down to the boat. And it's very dangerous to do that. I followed along in my car to make sure they got the right intersections and everything else. But, from Surfside Road at the end, by the high school, to try to get down to the boats, what would be the recommended path for safety reasons for kids trying to get to the boat or tourists getting to the boat from the surf side?
Walk it up Main Street, all the way down Pleasant.
Well, you could maybe you go left and then down Main, or you go down to Orange Street and then.
I go to Dover.
Yeah, that's what I do, but I don't know.
That's
if I
what we
recommend
did.
An 8-year-old kid.
But that's
crossing
what we
Union
did,
Street
but
from
good
Andover.
grief, anyway, I'm just saying.
The signed route is basically going down Atlantic Avenue to Pleasant Street to Jefferson Avenue, actually, to I believe it's Fair Street going into town, and Fair Street marries up with Main Street, so that gets you into the core area. That's what's signed right now as the preferred bike route.
So I guess in response to that, I might say, given how many dollars we're funding and various improvements here and there, and I haven't seen any proposal for Atlantic even, if that's the proposed. That's a very tight area that's high traffic. There's no real nice sidewalks or a bike lane on either side. So why aren't we proposing that?
Want to cut those trees down? It's tough. This is the problem.
Well, there's a hole, I think, on one
Yeah,
side.
it's
True, it's very tough.
Here's the thing, and this conversation is like a circular conversation. It's never going to have an end. We're in a position right now, we meaning planning, DPW, town, private funding, etc., where we're out of the big ones, except for, say, Walnut and Tom Meadows and Quidnet, if you want to go there. Forget those for now. These streets have the small layouts, curbing, trees, fire hydrants, telephone poles. I mean, this is hard to get a way. You're not going to ever have a bike path. The in-town bike path shouldn't even be called an in-town bike path. It's a bike route. It's not a path, okay? It is impossible to have one. The land bank acquisitions on Washington Street are helping make it work. There may be private funding to help fix the bid situation. It's possible, okay? I'll say it, okay? That's true, but we don't know if that's going to happen yet. But this stuff we're looking at right here, whether it's Prospect Street, whether it's Atlantic Ave, first time I've ever heard that brought up, but you're right. But, it isn't going to just happen. This is a public entity. To get things done like this is brutally complicated, okay?
What public entity are you talking about?
The town. It's complicated to do this stuff, okay? It's not like a private company where you can just go do it, okay? There's acquisitions, there's damage awards, moving fire hydrants. By the way, is Prospect Street, that funding including getting rid of those poles and putting that wiring underground for that turn?
Not underground, they're moving to the other side.
Moving it to the other side? Should be just moving onto people's property. But anyway, it's tough. I mean, this is not a bike path. This is a sidewalk improvement that can make bikes ride on them. That's what we're doing in these areas. I mean, the Milk Street extension is great, because we have the right of way for that, and the cemetery people. That one there is going to be pretty good. But some of this stuff is brutally complicated.
I do.
And you can't just think it's going to just happen. It just isn't.
Well, I think we would say he understands it's brutally complicated, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't
No, I know that.
be doing it because we're a tourism island.
No, we are doing
We're trying to encourage bikers. We're trying to
There
get
was
cars
pushback.
off the road.
The pushback that we got for that railroad thing set this back. How many years do you think that set us back? 2? easily.
I mean, it was proposed 30 years ago, so it's
Well,
been an idea for 30
okay,
years.
but as far as recent times, I think it's an historic commission issue. I mean, that's I would say 2 years has been pushed just from their complaining about the railroad bed. So there's a lot more to it than just the bidding and design.
No, I totally understand. I'm just saying, we as a town should have good strategy. When something takes a little longer, you can do other things along the way to improve traffic for pedestrians between the Mid-Island and town. And all I'm saying is that if we have a way of funding a small portion to get that done, if it only takes, a small amount of money to get that little section between where the Prospect Bike Path ends, as Phil's family could bike, all the way from Sherburne Commons on a bike path, all the way up to there. There's a little section, they get into some nice quiet side streets and they'd be there. Just my thoughts and concerns.
So the 380 is out, and the 4 dots are in, but are the 4 dots that are in going to, maybe I forgot, have they been funded, or are they
Yes.
trying to be funded?
Yes.
Okay, so the net of this for 2017 is removal of 380,000. Would you?
I'm totally confused. This bottom line number, 5.070800,
Yeah,
how does that correlate to the document that we have for this meeting?
I think it's it's the DPW number, isn't it?
Yes, it's
It's
DPW.
off because
Is it off by a little?
There's a couple things that are off. The 380 is now out, which is reflected in this new document.
Okay.
The 800,000 that's now in the first wave was 7. I don't know how it changed to 8. It's 750. So it's going to have to go back to 750 because that was our number. And the Roadway bike path grant we took out last week, so that would be the only thing out. Everything else, Friendship Somerset we moved out as well, yes. So Kara probably didn't know that because we haven't talked to her since last week about this, so just, and I can completely understand the confusion. We should have internally coordinated all of this before presenting to you, but looking at this sheet here going down, the 1 million is actually should be called Surfside Area Roads Reconstruction Phase 2, 1 million, that's in. Where it says road maintenance, chapter 90 has nothing to do with this, so that should be stricken, and it's called island-wide road maintenance, it's 900,000, that's in. Going down a little more, repairing, widening, adding sidewalks downtown, that's the wrong title, it should be called downtown, it should be called sidewalk improvement project phase 1, 1.5, that's in. First way road construction, that is 750. Rotating Friendship in Somerset, last week we talked about how we need to get much more information about the future maintenance and reconstruction of those areas, so that's out. Rotating Wynn Street. I believe that's in. What?
Didn't we already
Street
take that?
improvements,
I thought we took that already.
no. 250, that's in. The Surfside, Bartlett Surfside Roundabout tip project, that should actually have the word design in there.
Right.
150 is for design, that's in. These are confusing descriptions on the in-town bike path, but it should be basically taking costs for phase 2 and 3 of the in-town bike path, each 75,000. And I think last week when we discussed this, we were wondering if those are accurate numbers, but I'm assuming they are, since they were submitted very recently. And the Roadway bike path, the next number is out.
Maybe we can get together after this meeting and straighten out the wording between the 2 documents.
We'll do that.
Yeah, well, actually, we can just make this conform to the capital.
Thank you.
We'll get this into the software.
Great.
That's the way to conform it.
Any other questions? Kara and Mike? Thank you.
I do it at the club 4 times a day. So I know what's in there. To learn how I use this pattern. So
Good question.
you would have facts. You know, facts, you know what's going on.
Well, I think to some extent it's the chicken, or we're just talking about, counting the number of bikes and the number of cars. What I'm thinking, because of the situation of trying to get out of town and back into town, I would think it would hold down the number of bikes. But I don't know the answer. I mean, it's the fact.
It's a question for this committee.
Yeah. Well, there is a bikes and committee, right? They should be the ones doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Bring down.
As a result of your meeting last week,
Yes.
some discussion since then, Brian's going to pass out a revised spreadsheet.
Okay.
With all the discussion changes, so just talk about it.
It doesn't take into account the 380.
Thank you.
We don't have that.
Is that what we talked about?
Yeah, this is the funding stuff that we talked about.
Just for, just for 2017?
Just for 2017 right now, yeah.
Okay.
Just,
Super. That's what I've been working on.
Been waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
Been waiting for this?
Well, I thought we had it. This is an abstraction of 2017 from what we've been working on.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll go through it real quick.
Okay.
Obviously, the 380 is coming out, which was reflected in the number in the schedule that we put together when I talked to the town manager yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
The second page
Second page.
has about halfway down the total general fund items being the $9,562,000, which does agree to
Right.
the number in the packet, which I made the corrections over the weekend from the changes that we had from last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Underneath that is the other funding sources that we're proposing to use
Okay.
to fund the projects here, being proceeds from the real estate sales account, $2 million. Currently, there's about $115,000 that we have identified in prior year articles that can be reappropriated. Department heads are looking at to see if there's any more that could be reappropriated.
Thank you.
Total free cash available for appropriations is $2,783,000. The capital from the operating budget is $774 that we appropriate annually. 150 can come from waterways, which would cover the dredge plan, and the ambulance reserve for the 540 for the ambulances.
Mm-hmm.
So all told, the available funding sources are $6.3 million, which on the schedule shows that we have just under 3.2 million left to fund. The number actually is 2.8 now, 2.817 after we reduced it by the 380,000. So
2 and 8, is it 2, 8?
2,817,933.
933, got it. So it's actually more here. Mm-hmm.
Brian, can I ask a question? What do you think is the value of the sale of the fire department property?
I wouldn't even want to put a number on it, to be honest with you. Whatever the number is, it would go into the sale of land account, which would be appropriated for future projects or whatnot. So once that is all taken, once that's all done, I wouldn't guess at a number there.
So there'd be some cleanup, I would assume, with the storage tanks and,
There's some internal discussion going on right now about the fire station, and we're about to issue an RFP for it. Probably between 1 and 3 million.
okay.
Brian, just to go back to items left to fund is 2,000,008.
Right. It could be any combination of the items, because everything on the list statutorily could be borrowed for, so, obviously something that 60,000 we're probably not gonna borrow for, so, we fund the smaller stuff and then work towards the larger stuff more than likely. There's a couple available options I've looked at, and maybe talking to Cinder, we could consider a capital exclusion and do it all at once. We could consider debt exclusions. We could do a combination of funding some of it through just the normal operating increase every year through debt, and then do the rest as an exclusion, either capital or proposition 2.5. But those are still some internal discussions on how we present that and the warrant on how we best kind of manage that piece for this project.
Libby, you have to present this tonight at the Board of
I'm gonna
Supervisors.
just review it with them,
Yeah.
let them know that, your recommendations are gonna be given to the FinCom next week. They know that, I mentioned last week. So, it's sort of more of an overview tonight and an update, but yes.
But these two documents will probably be presented, corrected, of course.
Yes, we're gonna make that question, get that number down, so.
Richard?
Ryan, how does the 2.8 number relate to last year and then the 5-year trend? Is that something you have access to?
I have access to it, I don't have it right here.
What would be your sense though? Is it roughly?
I think it's more, it's higher than what we did last year.
Oh, yeah. We funded everything last year.
We funded everything last year.
Okay.
We had a lot of a lot more free cash last year.
But don't forget, we also funded 2 projects at the special town meeting that totaled $2.3 million that we used free cash for.
Which
So-
which would probably already.
Which would have been before you, so they would have been included and we would have been using it that way, so.
Yeah.
Those were funded at the special town meeting, that's why we're only using the remainder of the 2.7.
Is this exhausting the proceeds from real estate sales fund and the total free cash? Is this,
Well, the free cash will be exhausted.
Okay.
Okay, but to let you know too, which will be, presented tonight, there is a recommendation for $250,000 of free cash to go into the capital, that capital stabilization fund, so.
so that would bring that number
No,
down?
that is a net of that. So
Gotcha.
that, the 2.7 is what's remaining after the previous fundings and that recommendation.
That recommendation for 250.
With respect to the real estate proceeds, there's about the 2 million would leave, we used the 2 million, would leave approximately 2.4 million in that account for future years to appropriate. Plus any other sales that may occur between now and the end of the year that happen, because we can't use those till the audit's done and closed, so it'd be the future years that we would use that, any new additions.
Okay, the big elephant in the room is the 40% of the 2 sewer projects, which would be on top of the 9.2 million, right? Should we talk about that a little bit, or will you talk about that?
Sure, we can. So on pages 3 and 4 of the enterprise funds,
Sorry, okay.
that's okay. Excuse me. The 4th page has the subtotal of all enterprise funds being the 109 million. There was one slight change to this that's actually not in the capital sheets because we talked about it yesterday and it didn't get into the capital sheet yet. There's supplemental funding for the line landfill we received, and that is actually going to be input into the sheet, into the capital sheet. So this is slightly different than that number because that's $500,000.
Nope. Oh, that's right there.
Right.
Okay.
But just to,
So it's 109, 192.
yes, so it's about $500,000 different than what that sheet said, so
Okay.
I did want to let you know that. Then the airport AIP grants is about 1.55 million. I backed out, based on the numbers that are in the spreadsheet, the 40% for both Nantucket, Warren's Landing, Somerset, and then Monomoy and Mid-Island. So the net enterprise fund costs or projects is the 69 million. That 69 million does include the 60% in the sewer enterprise funds. It would be covered by betterments, but it's, and we probably should put that number on here too. Probably should add the betterments down there so that the net is what's actually being financed, outside, other than those, because they're really kind of individual. So including the sewer, what would be financed through retained earnings $69 million, which is including the sewers portion of that and the project.
So do we need to put that 40% or whatever it is, 40 million into the general fund sheet?
Well-
Or how are you gonna show that?
I mean, since these projects are typically done in Article 10, those are gonna be individual articles, so
Okay.
I'm not sure that I wanna put them on this sheet to show them, because they're gonna be separate articles that are gonna be dealt with because of the various mechanisms required for that funding, so, I certainly could put them up there as a footnote, I guess, or something, if you want, if you thought it was appropriate, or we could talk about them, but,
So this will be to Article 10, pretty much, those two sheets.
the first two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there'll be,
I can put them up there as a note that this cost is gonna be, these capital costs are estimated 40% up there. I could put that up there, so it would be probably a little more.
that's what's
clear.
gonna be presented.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And Our Island Home, is there any additions to the general fund from Our Island Home?
Well, it would. I guess that's the one thing we still are.
Well, we kind of struggle with this a little, the project's shown in the total 715.
Yes.
Either they're borrowed by the general fund, and we pay back the debt within the general fund budget without an override, just within one limit. Or we do it out of the Island Home budget, which
Then the
didn't
subsidy
hit
goes
until
up.
fiscal 18, and it would probably increase the general fund subsidy and/or increase their use of retained earnings, which is just about exhausted now. Either, I guess it's sort of 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other.
I don't know, there's some, I don't know, we'll throw it out to the
Yeah.
committee, but there's some advantage to showing the town what the subsidy is,
Yeah,
rather than burying it, or not burying it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
coming out of a place that's not as visible to the town as the subsidy is.
Just want to keep things simple.
So that would throw it into 2017.
And do we really, I mean, somebody's gonna ask the question, are we, you know, how important is this stuff with the potential new building? I mean, does it have to be done because of the time frame?
Yeah,
Yeah, it has to be done.
Just to keep the just to keep the building, sorry, just to keep it going until we just, figure out what we're gonna do with the new building. There's a lot of people in there that depend on these the air conditioning, the resident rooms, the window repairs which are rotting, the bathrooms. I mean, it's a pitiful situation that needs to be taken care of. I know it's putting Band-Aids on a major wound, but
It's like this,
we're sort of stuck with it, I think.
I know you go, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know, we are in the process of getting the 4 sewer projects updated. We're working with Woodard and Curran.
That was to answer your question, Richard, last week.
The consensus is that they're going to increase. I just don't know what that looks like right this minute. So,
Well, you did mention to me that they had built in some increases
well, what they had done, they had originally.
back before, so it may not be as bad as we think.
They had actually taken a low and high range estimate, and they had done, when they did it, they used an average, which was in the middle of those two, per linear foot for installation, and then added a cost for the pump stations. So they were somewhat conservative when they did it, but we have asked them to increase it. We've also, the way that we did it, when we asked them to increase it, was we asked them to carry out Monomoy and Somerset to 2017, because that's when we believe that those 2 projects, or that's the way the anticipated order is, would be bid in 17, and we asked them to carry out Nantucket Warren's Landing to 19, and then the plus Mid-Island parcels to 19, because the way they were recommending is that the timing for those projects to be done. So we've asked for them to be carried out to when they believe that the documents would be open for the bids, to try to give us a better, more realistic idea of what those numbers are. I don't have it right this instant, so, but it is something that we're working on, and hopefully I'll have it before we go tonight to the select. But we have asked for it, just to let you know, so that it is something that we're working on.
Great.
think we're pretty much to the end of changes for the plan. I went in and looked yesterday at another town's CIP that they have on their website, and basically what we have is very, very good. I think what's going to become obvious to the people in the department heads is once that's up on the website, that there are going to be places where the project's description is not filled in, where the justification is not filled in. But this is the first year, so I think a little leniency is fine. But next year, all that should be filled in, so people can know what these projects are one by one, because it makes it clear to people what we're spending our money on and what we're going to be spending our money on. But anyway, I was trying to do an executive summary just to kind of get a handle, because I think we need to get our report into the FinCom by Friday night. Friday, but
Tuesday.
because our presentation to them, or our meeting with them, is Tuesday at 4. So they want some opportunity to review it beforehand. So I'm thinking that I'll try to get an executive summary together to kind of pull all this stuff together so it's kind of more readily understandable. Then they will get the projects by department summary.
Yep.
And then the next section would be the individual projects, page by page by page by page. The funding sources, probably, well, anyway, you don't have to do that. One of the things I wanted to figure out is whether we're meeting the guidelines on debt, but I don't know that we're going to be ready for that, so I might not put that into the executive summary. The 12%, that.
We're probably off of that, but what maybe people don't know this, what we've been talking about lately is, we've just signed an agreement with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts called the Community Compact, which basically is something that the Baker administration is sort of shopping around to all the municipalities, where you sign up with them and they provide you technical assistance for a particular best management practice. So we've signed up, it's all set. We're going to provide technical assistance up to $25,000 to rewrite all of our financial policies. That's one we've most recently discussed, because quite frankly, the way our financial policies as existing now were written was sort of quick and meant to try to get them done because we needed to have them in place. And I'm not sure how much really detailed review in comparison with other communities there really was, and specific attention to our situation. So that is something that's going to be happening in the spring.
That's excellent.
So I'm not saying let's ignore our financial policy.
Mhm.
No,
Right.
it's likely to change.
Okay. And the final thing was the tax impact, but we can't figure that out until we know the funding and,
Well, we can, I have a call actually this
Southwest.
afternoon with Cinder.
Yeah.
So, we can do a rough one, and I'll just tell her I need it by tomorrow afternoon.
okay.
It will, or today might be a little tough.
Well, at least then you say, well, we'll back off until tomorrow then.
So by tonight, and I'll just have a look at it. We can do it real quick. If we did a capital exclusion, it's for 1 year, so we can internally figure out what that would do to the tax rate very quickly.
All right.
The others that she'll do, I'll just tell her you need it tonight, she'll get it done. If we're going with the 2.8, that's fine, I can get that.
Does a capital exclusion have to go to the ballot as well?
Yes, and it actually allows people, if I understood the way it's written correctly, it actually allows them to vote. It's all of the projects have to be listed when you do a capital exclusion, I think. And then they get to actually decide whether they want to do a particular project or not. So,
Are they,
But
I'm sorry.
We should talk about that,
Yeah,
because I
discussion.
think that once it's changed, you can either do it all as one, or you can break it up and do it.
right, so, but that's one time hit, so that would be adding $3 million in 1 year, so, and, right, so next year, so.
But they're going to need to know what they're voting on, right? So that gets back to the discussion earlier about we can fund the little items, but the bigger items probably are the ones that they're gonna vote on.
Yeah, we don't,
If we decided to go with that, or even a debt exclusion, we'd have to figure out which ones we're gonna do.
Okay. Okay.
it would be, I mean, just quickly looking, it could be possibly maybe three. Sidewalk improvement plan, 1.5 million. Surfside area roads phase 2, 1 million. Island wide road improvements, 900,000.
And who'd vote against those?
Well,
Be surprised.
Hmm.
Lost the vote for the boulevard by like 12 votes. The original.
Well, I think, well, to be honest, I think we've done a lot of good work in terms of getting this far with the department heads and with administration, with the new software. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it very much, all your hard work and time and Manel, and administration. I think now we have to sort of figure out how to present it, and what we say to the FinCom next week. If we do it the way I just said, they're going to have each project to be able to ask questions about. So we probably ought to get as prepped as we can be on things that you think might be questions for us.
That's where a lot of the input into the formatting, the new formatting this year, would be helpful to you. You know,
Yeah,
At least for the 2017.
for 2017, but
Yeah.
not the out years. We haven't really done
We don't
a
have any
tremendous
line-
job.
How many line items we're looking at for 2017?
Well, just have to count them. No, I don't know the answer right off the top.
40,
Excuse me.
no more.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have the printouts of, it's all on here. And I assume the FinCom, Christie, they'll just use the laptops and or the iPads. So those are the items they're going to be talking about, and the bigger issues are, I don't know. Hopefully we'll work on the bigger ones. The questions will be on those, the sewer. I don't know that they've got much choice there either, other than to understand that we're reviewing the actual numbers. Christie?
There's always choice. There's always choices.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you dwell on the little bitty ones and don't get around to the big ones. Christie, any comments about presenting to the FinCom, since you are a member?
I mean, having been on there, I think the lead time for getting documents to the FinCom is the most important thing, so that they have questions. As far as past documents, I mean, they've always been clear. I think we've always found capital presentation to be pretty straightforward and thorough. So, I mean, I don't know how, with the new software, how that might change the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've done it for the last number of years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that would improve the presentation, but it's always been pretty clear and straightforward. And,
Okay. I think it'll improve it a lot, Chrissy, because here's what we used to present. Here's what we used to get. Where is it? It's on the second page of what Kara handed out, Prospect Hill. I'm not even sure we gave these to the FinCom. But this is what the Capital Program Committee was dealing with, and very inconsistent, but the information was there, not perfect, but I think now they're going to see a lot more from from the CIP than they ever saw before, and that probably could help them answer their own questions to a large extent, which would be a nice thing for the FinCom to have.
I mean, it happens often that there's a lot of good questions come out of the meeting, and sometimes it's things that this committee may have not thought about. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's,
So to get to that, it's 4:00. It's right after if the WPI students are presenting their projects from 1 to 4, which I plan to go to. There are a lot of really interesting projects there. I'm retired, so I can do that. And so So our meeting's at 4 downstairs, and I guess the format is we sit down down in the audience and the FinCom is up at the dais, if you will. So Brian, it's going to be right there where we're going to be, so getting them out of there on time is probably going to be, interesting scheduling situation. I don't know, I'd like some time to kind of figure out what happened here this morning.
You tell me.
Maybe this
Okay, tonight.
afternoon, well, yeah, you want to do it tomorrow? I was going to say, you've got a lot to do
If you
before
wanna do it
the
this
Board of Select
afternoon,
meeting.
okay. 3 o'clock.
Terrific, I'll be there. We'll figure out what we can say and what we're not ready to say.
All right.
In time for Tuesday. And then there's plenty of time from Tuesday to April. Any other comments by the committee, from the committee?
Just one, Phil, I'm keep turning over my head in this idea of, kind of getting pedestrians between the Mid-Island and town, and I think it would be helpful as a board member if this, committee were to make a motion saying that the committee finds that there is a need, and we do not have a funding item, and that the board maybe should take a little further look.
The Board of Selectmen?
Yeah. I find that would be helpful as a board member, if you guys feel that would be,
Funding item to match, excuse me,
to match
the
any.
bid of what the in-town bypass came back
Yeah,
at? Is that what you're
that
talking
or
about?
any proposal to increase any proposal to increase the safety of pedestrians between the Mid-Island and town. We're not addressing this, but it would be helpful, for me as a board member, to show that this is an area of concern.
One thing I would say to that is, and I thought of this before when we were talking about, decided to be quiet after I thought too much already. You have to think about it this way. Just to give you an example, we've waited 100 years to fix those 3 intersections. We fixed 2 out of the 3, and we fixed them right. I'd rather do it right than just to do something, just to do it, and it's really not right. Like, we have a lot of things we have to think about. Like, for example, Toby, is if all the land bank acquisition stuff on Washington Street hadn't happened, let's say we tried to do this bike path, like Mike said, it's been in the plans for 30 years. If we did it 10 years ago, we would have had a heck of a right-of-way issue because the land was all privately owned. Now it's a little easier to work with the land bank to do it. What I'm saying is, it's going to take a conceptual sort of understanding about curbing, about some of the stuff we may or may not want to do to make things work right when it comes to these complicated areas to fix, whether it's pedestrians, whether it's bikes, whether it's both. It's not easy.
I'm not denying that at all. All I'm saying as a board member, I found that sometimes there's projects or instances. I'll wrap up quickly, Phil.
No. I just want to hold my hand up because I had a comment eventually.
When we funded the rest of Old South, for example,
If I could,
that scenario.
if I could just finish, that sometimes when things get to the board, they're not, the board isn't quite sure of whether or not to do something, and a project may not be ready to come before the board because all the I's and T's aren't dotted, and so we, kind of kick it back. But there's kind of a give and take and a chicken and egg issue, and I'm just saying it would be, as a board member, and if we think that this is a safety concern.
Well, okay, I was thinking of 2 things. One, when you get to the Board of Selectmen level, there's priorities is one. Look at the priorities. Look at the huge amounts of money we're spending. Where do bike paths come as a priority? But secondly, who is in a position to come to the Board of Selectmen to make that recommendation? Isn't there a bike path and sidewalk committee?
Yes.
Shouldn't that really come from them?
Well,
And complicated, yeah.
So they report to the planning department, and so far I haven't heard anything from the planning department.
They're like the right-of-way committee for bicycle pedestrian. It's kind of like an offshoot. The planning commission appointed this group, and they're discussing sort of similar things that the right-of-way committee's been doing for years for this particular topic that's always talked about.
And the roads and right of way is gonna come talk to the board, shortly, give a presentation, I know.
I don't know.
Next couple of months.
That's true. I assume so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the third thing I
Thank
said
you.
was, how many bikers do we have that are on all these committees or on the Board of Selectmen? I mean, if you actually tried to ride, you'd see what the problem is.
No,
But if
I
you-
agree with you.
if you
It-
don't-
Nobody doesn't agree. It's, as I said before, we've done all the easy stuff. Right, no, we have. All right, it wasn't long ago, there was no bike path right out here. Imagine there was no bike path on Fairgrounds Road. Now you'd be like, what? But it's not that old.
Yeah.
The safety to get to town past a certain point, like I would say Marine Lumber in, I would say Atlantic Ave in, I would say Quaker Cemetery in, I would say Cliff Road. I mean, I talked to a private property owner on the road the other day that's got a lot of money that would love to fix the section between Sherman Turnpike and Highland Ave. It's gonna be harder to get that done than it was to get Cliff Road, the whole entire thing built. Because of the it's gonna have to be designed in a way that works. It's not gonna be a bike path, it's gonna be some kind of shoulder widening, some sort. We're getting into these little areas that are not simple. There isn't one concept that makes sense. It's just like this prospect thing. I mean, look at this thing. I mean,
I know.
we have talked about this for years. The selectmen blew up this idea about 6 years ago, and made a fool out of the planning department at a meeting. But it's still basically the same idea. Now, all of a sudden, it's great, but it takes time for us to adjust. When you say, I don't know if you remember this, Toby, when that multi-use path was built, it stops at Stojacks. There was letters in the paper how stupid it was. Lots of them, okay? Now you're saying, and I agree with you, why don't we build these little pieces that we can? But we got a lot of crap for building that little path.
No, all I'm saying.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's true,
No,
okay?
I'll figure it out.
No, but Toby,
Well,
what I'm saying is, I agree with what you're saying. I'm just telling you that what happens when these projects try to happen, there was a lot of negative response to that.
I think what Toby's trying to
Make a
do,
motion or don't.
No, okay.
well, basically, what Toby's trying to say is, can we raise the level of, raise the priority of this?
I have a simple question. How many bike racks or spaces for bikes do we have downtown?
There is space for about, I want to say 550. I remember there was a count recently.
Good, so at least we know that fact.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a fact that we should know, how many bikes can be downtown before you build ins and outs and why and who.
And then the rental companies have about 3,800 rental bikes, and they're sold out.
Because I'll only make a small point. At the club, we 4 times a day count the number of cars that come through our turnstile, and we categorize them as employees or members or deliveries or officials. And then we count bikes 4 times a day, and we've been doing it for 8 years. So we know exactly how many bikes are coming in, where they're parked, and how many spots we have. And it's just good, it helps me manage an entity, it's called land, and how it's being used. And we know that our bikes outweigh our cars now, which is good. And we know they get there because they're driving through downtown. So I think it's good for your group to make a decision. If you don't have factual information coming from any committee that we've created in town, you're working in a vacuum.
Right.
So I think that those facts and figures, if we have those things, should be, maybe not for this committee, because we're approving a path whether it goes in or not, or agreeing to it. I think all the information has to be ascertained, and everyone should have that in front of them. That's just,
And all I'm expressing is, I've been on the board for 3 years, and it's hard to get that information. And so
And
I'm
that-
trying,
yeah.
I'm asking this board as another.
so I think we can go at it from, if we have to, I think we can make some sort of recommendation based on, let's get the facts.
I think
Like all these pages that are filled out or not filled out.
I think the question to what Peter's saying is, how many more bike racks can be added? Not how many we have, there's plenty of room for more bikes.
And we keep on adding
Plenty.
bike racks, yeah.
I mean, the side of Applebee's doesn't have any, and it's all wide, that's the widest sidewalk we got.
But we-
So, I mean, I wouldn't worry about how many bikes capacity now. I would say, where is there room for more
Because when you ask for a new business to go in, we talk about how many spaces there should have, and we give them, obviously, we tell them, well, you can't have 10 cars because you have a space for 2. If we're going on the car side, why don't we ask about how many bike racks they could put in, if that's where you want to go?
All right, so Toby's request, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not against his motion or asking for a motion. I'm just trying to clarify the little historic stuff
Yeah.
with this.
I guess
That's all.
I'm just a member of the committee, but from a member of the committee, I just don't know what we would say. We recommend it's a higher priority. We got
what he's saying is-
$9.5 million here already.
Improving the in-town bike safety to get to out of town or get to in-town.
We'd like to see more projects
Same thing.
along those lines or
It's
something.
more, higher priority at completing these projects. Is that what you're looking for?
I mean, can you add it to what we currently, we're currently making a comment on a few items here, bike path-wise, and we can add a sense of urgency to it and maybe just sort of a slight alternate desire that, this is addressed a little bit more in the future, and that we'd like to, see the past bunch of years wrapped up as far as the bike path, because we've been looking at it for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think I think you're not gonna be able to
Maybe a sentence or two.
detail
in
that,
an
but I
executive
think
summary.
that a broad, maybe directive within an already current,
Did.
yeah.
I think I know what you're saying. Use the fire station as an example. What was it, 15 million we put in?
Yeah.
We needed another 2. We put in for X for in town, it comes back something more, and it's like, okay, where's this other money gonna come from? Because it can't come from TIP because there's a limit to that, how much funding can come from that. So I think that's what Toby's trying to say. Do we suggest an override? Do we go out to private entities? I mean, there is a couple of private entities here that would probably pitch into this project, similar to what happened with Humming Pond. But I think that's what Toby's trying to say, I think.
Yeah, and I don't want to force anything on the committee. I kind of was looking over the numbers late last night and was like, we're going to spend over $100 million on various capital, and what are some of the real safety? What are we doing to address safety in all that money?
Well, to me, this start of this thing, this part is critical. I mean, this is, people are driving by these areas kind of quickly, more than they are in town so much, but.
I didn't want to belabor it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll put together a comment, and I'm going to send this all out to you guys before send it off anyway. So I'd appreciate your feedback on what we say and how we say it. Okay.
Is there any little component or feedback you want from us? Any little thoughts on any of these that you want from us? Are you comfortable going in?
I think I'm comfortable going in, but that doesn't mean I'm
We'll sit 3 rows
an
behind.
an authority. Yeah, don't say we're right behind you, but way behind you.
I'll supply Habitat hard hats.
Very good.
I have a quick question for Carol, if she's here. I forgot she was still here. That, just something I noticed, the C Street pump station construction, does that mean waterproofing too? Is that the thing that David was talking about? Just so people know what that is. Construction sounds like we're building a new pump station.
It's actually a total renovation.
It's a renovation, but it's the waterproofing thing that he talked about with the existing building, right?
Well, that plus a number of other things, and
Okay.
pumps, new controls.
But the waterproofing thing is key. We're not building a new building and starting from scratch.
No.
Okay, because that's what it kind of looks like when you say the word construction. It's sort of, you know what I mean? Because that was a very important thing that David talked about, this waterproofing thing. I think that's really,
That's where you go to those individual sheets.
that, to mention.
Sorry to distract.
All right.
Very good. That's why you're on the committee. Are there any comments from the committee?
Looking to adjourn.
Let's adjourn. Our next meeting is supposed to be next Wednesday. Sitting here right now, I think I'd like to have it. I'd like to keep it on the schedule because I'd like to review what happened the night before and see what work we have left to do.
Okay.
Okay? So can we keep it on, can you keep it on your schedule for that Wednesday? Okay? Thank you all very, very, very much. Start reviewing them line by line, and if you think you see something that we're not clear about, Christie, let us know, so before I get in front of the chairman of the capital program. He's very vicious, I hear.
So is this what they used to give to the?
That's what we used to get, and that one is actually filled out very, very
I
nicely,
was
but
gonna say,
most of
because
them are.
this is how much information they would give for each one of these line items.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're gonna get what we're gonna get that doesn't have all this information now.
I don't recall.
No, the FinCom never got that. That was,
That's a department head request.
Okay, gotcha. So
Right.
this isn't what they were giving to you guys.